shorts. I was wearing them all last week at Future Proof, but we've had an extended summer here, so I'm still getting some shorts. But we're inching closer to jogger season, and after jogger season in the fall, then we inch even closer to sweatpants season. And the great thing about these is that they also have the built-in liner, just like the shorts, and the side pocket, so it feels like you're wearing the Bird Dog shorts, even though they're joggers or pants. Plus, they have the stretch khakis as well, which easily one of the harder words in the English language to spell is the stretch khakis. But they're great because they have the same material as the shorts. They're very comfortable. You can kind of stretch and move. And remember, if you go to birddogs.com/ATC, you get one of these white stretch tech hats, which are very. I still owe you one, Duncan. I keep saying that, but I still have it. ATC is the code when you check out.
Also, just FYI, I think StreamYard might have been delayed taking us live there. So I think people might have missed some of the beginning part. So just the TLDR is I'm coming in live from Frankfurt, Germany, and Ben made a joke about me wearing lederhosen. So yeah, in case you missed that.
Right, I had to look it up to remember what that was called. I had a very fun day at the Hofbrauhaus when I was in college before, which is all I need to say. But I know you're going to be there for Oktoberfest. You're kind of traveling all over Germany, right?
Yeah. Berlin down to Munich. Yeah, everything.
Okay. I have one question for you finance-wise. Did you check that your credit card allows free foreign transactions before you left?
I did. Yeah.
Good.
I'm using the Sapphire Reserve for pretty much everything here. So.
All right, just making sure. It's kind of nice. You don't have to. I remember when I went there in college, I had to exchange money all the time, and you'd get just screwed on the transaction fees and the whatever the currency exchange rate was. They'd always, I feel like they took 2 or 3% off every time. So
yeah, a lot more places now are accepting cards too. When I came here years ago, it was more cash only kind of stuff, but now I'm seeing a lot more credit. So they're catching up. They're here, they're in the future.
Dogecoin, that sort of thing.
Right.
All right, let's do a question.
Okay, up first today we have, I'm 39 with no kids or dependents. I'm a registered nurse with an annual income close to $110,000. I have $370,000 in my 401k, $190,000 in an IRA, and $220,000 in my brokerage accounts. Not to brag, that's me, not them. I currently reside in a duplex where I rent out both my basement and second floor. My outstanding mortgage balance is $190,000 at a fixed rate of 2.8% for 30 years. Additionally, I have an investment property which is paid in full. Per Zillow, the estimated value of my primary residence stands at $400,000, while my investment property is valued at $650,000. I'm contemplating using the equity I've built up to further my real estate portfolio or explore alternative investment avenues. I'm faced with the decision of whether to leverage a home equity loan, even with high interest rates, or wait for a potential rate change. Also, is it wise to use my equity to buy more stocks?
Right.
I think
Duncan,
it's a pretty impressive question coming from a 39-year-old.
Yeah, he's in a pretty good position. Having one house paid off and a 2.8% mortgage on another one puts Joel here in a pretty good position. But he's realizing the problem though. He's house rich, right? And the thing you realize once you have a house paid off, or you have a lot of it paid off, you have equity, is great. He no longer has the payments on the one house, and the payments are obviously probably low on the other one. But all that equity sitting there, once you have it, you start thinking, well, what good is it doing me? I can't spend my house. I can't sell shares of my house like I could with a stock if it's appreciated in value and use it for something else. The liquidity is the problem. So there are some options here, but I think none of them are really a slam dunk. So you could open up a home equity line of credit or do a cash out refinance, but then we're talking borrowing at ridiculous rates. So 7 and change probably if you did a cash out refi right now, and 8 to 9% for a home equity line of credit, which does not sound great. So if you're planning on taking that money out and looking at other investment opportunities, that's a really high hurdle rate. I would prefer the HELOC at this moment than a cash out refi, because those rates could fall. When other rates fall, it'll fall faster, and you don't have to refi, and you don't have to you don't have to start making the debt repayments right away. We've talked about the HELOC before. You could use that equity in your home and just sell it and use it for a down payment on a new house, but then again, you have the higher mortgage rates. The reverse mortgage is something we've talked about in the past, but he's 39 years old, so you have to be older to do that. So again, having home equity is a wonderful thing, but what are you supposed to do with it? He does have a very concentrated position in real estate with owning 2 houses, even though one of them's paid off. The great thing is you don't have those down payment or those monthly payments anymore, so you could take that money that you would have been paying for monthly payments and diversify that way. But I think something that a lot of people who own rental properties probably don't think about is, why don't you just sell it, right? It's kind of like retirees with their principal. They say like, I'm never touching my principal. I'm only living on the income. It's a psychological thing where I think people, once they get rental properties, even if they depreciate it in value, they go, no, I'm getting this rental income. It's doing great for me. And the way that real estate investors look at this is through a cap rate. So let's say you have the house valued at $600,000 or whatever. Let's say you're netting $2,500 a month. So you're not making payments anymore. So after taxes and stuff and maintenance, let's say you're netting $2,500 a month on that. That's $30,000 a year. That's a 5% cap rate, call it, on a $600,000 house. So could that money be put to work? And obviously, you can play with the numbers and figure out how much you're actually bringing in to figure out what that cap rate is. So could that money be put to work elsewhere with better returns? Possibly. I don't know. Maybe some people just like being landlords. You can increase the rent each year to account for inflation. Duncan, you're a renter. You know how this works. I actually re-upped my office lease this week, and Bill Sweet was looking through the contract with me. I've been in the same office since 2015. It's still barely standing, even though there's been a few floods and a few problems. My office is okay. I still like it. It's close to my house, and so I re-upped again. And Bill and I actually calculated what's the inflation rate been since 2015 when I first moved in, and surprisingly, it almost identically matches the rate of inflation. So it's 3.4% per year. My rent has gone up, and CPI in that time has gone up 3.3% per year.
Not bad.
So not too bad. So I think right now is not the environment to be a borrower. So he asked about, could I just wait until the rates situation is better? And yeah, I don't know how long that will be, but I wouldn't feel great about borrowing at 7-9% right now. That's a pretty high hurdle rate. I think a lot of it depends on how much you care about owning real estate, because again, you could just sell the house. You don't have to hold on to it. It does sound
pretty cool though to be 39 and be able to like refer to your real estate portfolio.
Right, but I think the reason he's having this internal tug of war is he realizes like, I have all this equity sitting there and I can't do anything with it. Yes, the home equity line of credit sounds good, but that works better typically if you borrow to do fix the house up or something. So maybe you could fix your house up, or you could, I don't know, kick your renters out of your duplex and live like a king. I don't know. I think it's okay to think about selling it, especially in an environment where there's not much supply and the house is probably appreciated in price a lot. And then you have that liquidity event, and then now what are you going to do? You have a ton of money to put to work somewhere else. I think I would at least consider that, as opposed to holding the real estate up. And I think probably what he's thinking about is, I'll take some out, I'll use it as a down payment for a new place and put some leverage on it, and then I don't care as much about the borrowing. And I guess that makes sense too, but I'd just be worried about the rates being so high right now.
Yeah, John Carlo in the chat asks, are there ARM adjustable rate HELOCs?
Well, HELOCs are technically adjustable rate as it is. Like the rate fluctuates. It's like a LIBOR plus something or whatever prime rate plus something. So it'll fluctuate, but with rates this high, it's going in the wrong direction, and who knows, they could go higher.
Gotcha.
The hope would be that you could, I don't know, pay it off with the income. And if you're borrowing at 7 or 8% and it's only for a couple of years and you pay off it for down payment, then maybe it's not so bad, because that the longer term is what hurts you there. But yeah, good for you. Good financial position, obviously.
Yeah.
You got a few, not to brag. All right, let's do another one. Another housing one. We've gotten a lot of housing ones here.
All right. Up next, we have a question from Max. I'm 30 and recently divorced. I received a $130,000 settlement for a house we purchased in 2021. She stayed in the house. Total liquid assets are $265,000 plus $50,000 in my 401k. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area and make $125,000 base with $60,000 variable salary, and my rent is $2,600 a month. Having lost a $500,000 mortgage at 3%, I feel I'm stuck without a home in the current market. Friends are taking out $7,000 monthly mortgages when comparable rents are $4,000 to $5,000. How is that sustainable? How am I supposed to purchase something at 6 to 7% on a single income? I've explored land purchases to create Airbnbs or purchasing a rental property, but borrowing costs and high prices make this feel impossible. I feel like I'm not getting the full value of my $265,000, and I'm unsure of how to allocate it for my financial future. Aside from getting another wife to pay half the bills, what should I do?
Okay, I understand the consternation here. This is a tough break. Obviously, divorce is...
Sorry to hear it. Yeah, sorry to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always difficult from an emotional perspective, but there are financial considerations as well. I also wonder, remember in Wedding Crashers, Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson's characters are like divorce settlement attorneys, and they help the negotiation. I would love to know how those negotiations went for a 3% mortgage, because how much is that worth in a 7% environment? Like, do you think that this guy kind of got screwed a little bit for his payout?
Yeah.
I would have done some discounted cash flow analysis something. I'm not trying to say you got screwed, but I think you might have got screwed. Because that's
I was thinking that sounded a little low given what he's talking about, but yeah.
And I made this joke before, but I've heard of stay together for the kids. I wonder how many people are staying together for the 3% mortgage these days. Right?
Stay together for the mortgage.
All right. Max here is in a tough spot. The housing market is broken in many ways. Affordability about as bad as it's been. We've talked about this before. Plus, he lives in the Bay Area where house prices were unaffordable before we got to 7.5% mortgage rates. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of peer pressure in these, especially since he's 30 when it comes to the housing market. And it's like, you have to buy a house. Why are you paying someone else's rent? You have to build equity. I'm sure people have heard these ones before. Or he's thinking it himself. Here's the secret, especially if you live in a high cost of living area. Buying a house is not for everyone. I know it seems like it has to be, but owning a home is not for everyone. Yes, it's a wonderful hedge against inflation. It's a forced savings vehicle. It offers this wonderful form of psychic income that's really hard to match, but that doesn't mean everyone has to buy a house. Here's the list of people who shouldn't buy a home. Number one, you want to retain some level of flexibility in your personal life or your career because you move around or whatever. You don't want to pay all the ancillary costs that come with a home ownership. I've heard the line before that when you pay your rent, your housing costs are done, right? But when you pay your mortgage, that's just the start of your housing costs. It's mortgage plus all these things. Yeah. Another one is you just don't want all the responsibilities of owning a home. It's all, the landscaping, the upkeep. It can be a lot. For some people, I think if you don't live in the house long enough to cover the switching costs from buying, selling, moving, closing costs, all these things. Other people, I think if you run the numbers and realize renting makes more sense for your financial situation. And I think the last one is if you live in a high cost of living area. I think the first one about retaining flexibility makes sense here because this guy just got a divorce. His life is probably in a state of upheaval. I don't know if he wants to think about moving somewhere else or if he has the potential for a job. Maybe he just loves living in the Bay Area because of friends or family, or he just really likes it. But I think the last two make the most sense. You run the numbers and realize renting is better for you, or you live in a high cost of living area, right? I think, as he pointed out in his question, buying is just more expensive than renting. He's paying $2,600 a month in rent and $7,000 for a mortgage or whatever. Redfin actually did this analysis, and they looked at the largest premiums in terms of renting versus buying. And John, throw up my chart here. This is from Redfin, and it looks at home ownership premiums. So in San Jose is the worst one. It's 165% more expensive to buy than to rent. San Francisco, it's almost 140%. Wow. You can see the top ones here are almost all California, right? And this analysis was done when mortgage rates were 6.5% because they did this a few months ago. Now it's like 7.3% at the latest, I think. So John, do the next one, which is the most populous cities. This is like the most populous cities with the biggest premium. And you can see a lot of them are in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Anaheim. It's a lot of West Coast places, a lot of California. And it's just, so I looked at the median home price in San Francisco is like $1.4 million. Kind of sounds like a lot. So if you wanted to buy and you put 20% down, that's $280,000. And you said your liquid net worth is $265,000. So it's your whole liquid net worth plus $15,000 extra plus closing costs and all that stuff. With a 7.3% fixed rate mortgage over 30 years, we're talking $7,700. And that's before property taxes, insurance, HOA, maintenance. Is it really worth it to use all of your liquid financial assets and spend $5,000 more a month or more for your monthly payment just so you can own instead of rent? For some people, the numbers might not matter. They simply want to buy a house no matter what. And sure, you have the ability to refinance. Even if you refinance that mortgage, if rates went down to 5%, you're at $6,000 a month. So my point is, you don't have to buy a home just because society says you do, especially in a situation like today. You have to run the numbers. You have to understand your circumstances. And I don't think you need to be in a rush, especially if your life has come up under like some big upheaval, right? So buying a house can be a wise financial decision. For some people, it doesn't have to be for everyone. I say don't be in a hurry and wait just because someone says you're paying someone else's mortgage. Because if you can take those savings, figure out what you'd be paying in a mortgage and save the difference, you're gonna be in a pretty good place financially. And maybe in a few years, you do feel like, okay, I've saved enough. Now I want to go ahead and buy. Then it makes sense. Can you imagine
how expensive California would be if they didn't have earthquakes? I mean,
that's the trade-off. The earthquakes and wildfires kind of balance it out, but it's still ridiculously expensive to live there, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're in a high cost of living area like that and rent is that much cheaper, don't be in a hurry to buy just because you think you have to. Owning a home is not for everyone.
Good advice. Says the homeowner. Right.
Fair. Yes. Stay away from my houses. All right.
All right,
Another
up
question.
next, let's see. I'm in my early 20s with a stable job. Should I sell down assets in my Roth to pay off credit card debt?
Okay,
Look
you gotta
how
love
nice
this.
and succinct this question is. Beautiful.
What did you say? Dostoevsky. How do you? I can't even say the name about how you.
Dostoevsky. Yeah.
Yeah. We do get a lot of information from our
We get
audience
a lot
here.
of very long questions. Yeah, what you see on the show is actually the abbreviated version usually. So yeah.
Yeah, people want to make sure that we got all the bases covered. Okay, Duncan, what's Ben's number one rule of personal finance?
Pay off debt. Right.
Pay off your credit card debt, right? Not paying off your credit card debt each month is a personal finance killer. It's like Jim Simon's level of compounding, but against you, right? It's like in the opposite direction. So I don't think you necessarily have to pay off, like liquidate your Roth to pay off your credit card. It is an option, but I would just recommend that you'd use the contributions from your Roth and not take out any gains that you may have, because then you have to pay an early withdrawal penalty. But that's one of the benefits of a Roth, is that you can take out the contributions tax and penalty free. So I think this decision probably comes down to loss aversion versus debt aversion. Loss aversion, I've been trying to teach my daughter this lately, that losses sting twice as bad as gains make you feel good. Like when her favorite team loses, it makes her feel worse than the wins feel good. So I think if seeing a chunk of your Roth assets just evaporate, even if it makes your debt go away, if you can't handle that, I think that's one way to think about it. Debt aversion, I think if it just causes you pain all the time to be in this debt and you feel like it's just a burden and a weight on you, then maybe taking out some of those Roth conversions make sense. I think you could start, the initial first step would be just stop making any further Roth contributions and use whatever contributions you're making to pay off your credit card debt. I think that's a good first step. You could also look into a 0% credit card and do a balance transfer. Duncan, we've been talking about this lately. A lot of these places will allow you to open up a 0% credit card for 15, 18, 21 months, and then you pay 3% for a balance transfer. Now, that sounds like a lot until you realize that you're paying like 27% or something on credit card interest. So I think that's a pretty good first step, and that'll give you some breathing room to pay it off slowly instead of trying to pay it off all at once. And again, I think you can then take your Roth contributions, use those to pay credit card debt. Once the credit card debt is paid off, then roll those payments right into your Roth again, so you can kind of play catch up, and then you're in business. That's
I did
the
one
route
of
that
these
I would
recently
start.
too. So yeah, 3% with my track record, that's not that high of a hurdle rate in the market, you know?
Right? Yeah. Compared to Oatly options, it's pretty good.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, I would, for all your credit cards going forward, like paying it off would be nice, but it makes no difference if you're just going to rack up more credit card debt in the future. Click that auto pay button to pay the entire balance each month and hold yourself accountable to pay it off, and don't let it roll over each month.
Yeah, I mean, this math is much clearer if you are paying 24, 27% interest on a balance on a credit card. Like, you got to get rid of that, right? I mean, that's brutal.
Yes, that's ridiculous. So figure out a way to do that. All right.
Cool.
Let's do another
Okay.
long one.
Up next, we have a question from Jeff. I'm retiring in a month at 56 with a $4 million portfolio. No debt, a $300,000 severance package, and a $5.2 million net worth. Jeff's pretty set, in my opinion, but non-professional opinion. I'm married with 2 daughters, college paid for. I know it seems dumb, but I'm trying to decide on a 50-50 simple 4-fund ETF portfolio versus my 55-45 simple 4-fund portfolio in perpetuity. That's a hard word. It's the difference of $150,000, which is probably relatively small compared to the entire portfolio, but I keep reading about how going to a 50-50 at the start of retirement is important to avoid sequence of returns risk. I've put 3 years of cash away in a 5% T-bill ETF, and we'd be very comfortable living off a 3% withdrawal rate. I've always followed a monthly DCA plan and rebalance yearly, and it served us well. It's weird that I'm stressing over this, but I would like to only retire once. A simple go for it will suffice, and I'll do the 55-45. I don't want to be greedy and have too many equities, and don't want to be stupid by being overly conservative. I'm going to need you to break this one down.
All right. Dave in the chat says he wants Jeff to just simply adopt him because he's got so many not the brags here. This sounds like an asset allocation question because it's like, should I be 50-50 or 55-45? But it's really a financial planning and even more behavioral finance question. So let's bring a financial advisor in here to help us out with this one. Nick Sapienza.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, guys.
Nick, I think Jeff here has been reading Michael Kitces, who have some research on this that says early in retirement, sequence of return risk can kill you because if you start out with a bear market and you sell your stocks, you're going to put yourself into a hole. So I think that's what Jeff is worried about here. Should I get more conservative? But obviously the difference I think between 55-45 and 50-50 is kind of splitting hairs here.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to call out a few things from the question, right? 56, married, 2 daughters, college paid for, $4 million investable, no debt, $300,000 severance package, $5.2 million net worth. And the question is 50-50 versus 55-45. It's a difference of 5% or $150,000, right? These are minimal differences in the grand scheme of things. And he mentioned reducing sequence of returns risk. So just to back into that, we talked about this the first time I was on a few months ago. It's the order in which you get a bear market. So like to Jeff's fear is, what if I'm retiring and this is the top of the market like it was in 2000 or 2008? What happens to my portfolio? But he's already mitigated probably 95% of those risks, right? He's diversified.
The biggest risk for sequence of returns is you're forced to sell your stocks when they're in a bear market.
Right.
So that's the hardest part, is you don't want to have to sell when they're down, because if you're the timing of your withdrawals works out bad where you're down 40% and you're selling your stocks, then you're setting yourself up for potentially failure in retirement.
Yeah, exactly. You can't make it to the other side of the bear market or secular bear market where you run into the bull market, and that usually would offset that, right? You have to worry about running out of money. But in his case, low withdrawal rate, a 3-year cash buffer. I mean, usually it's like 1 or 2 years, so he's gotten more on that side. And then assuming he's got in that 4 ETF portfolio, it's globally diversified. It's not just entirely in like one specific country or sector or anything like that. Lastly, it's the behavior piece that mitigates that sequence of returns risk, is behavior and impulse control. So whether or not he can stick with it. We've got a few charts here just to, go down the rabbit hole for fun and explore this a little bit. The first one is just comparing the differences in the 50-50 versus the 55-45. The difference is 0.5% per year, which is meaningful, especially over a 40-year time horizon, which is what Jeff potentially faces, right? And so it's
Well,
really
look at that
arbitrary.
chart. It's. I mean, you're hugging the line there. Either one, you're pretty much going to be in the same spot.
Exactly, and these are kind of like cherry-picked dates, right? Well, I mean, at least we've got a full market cycle and a few bear markets embedded in this, but it's neck and neck. There's like no difference whatsoever. The next chart is, okay, well, what if Jeff's thinking in terms of, he's back testing his portfolio and he's thinking in terms of maximum drawdown, and he says, and the way that he's gotten to 50-50 or 55-45 is not just so much by sequence of returns risk, but his max pain threshold. He said, this is the most pain that I can tolerate. And it's at 31. I mean, you're looking at 31% in 2008 for a 50-50 portfolio. And then on the next chart, you'll see the 55-45 breakdown. Now, this is the ACWI and AG, so this is a globally diversified portfolio. The 55-45, you're looking at a negative 34% drawdown in 2008. So again, not really a huge difference. If you look at the long-term average, 4.78 versus 4.36 on the average drawdown, this is pennies. And so really what this comes down to is that the best plan is the one that you can stick with. My thoughts on this whole topic are that Jeff is splitting hairs, and typically when we split hairs, it's usually about something else. So the thing is not the thing. This isn't really a stock or bond question. This is, am I going to be okay question. Jeff needs the validation that he's making the right decision so that he can have conviction in his own plan and he can move forward with that and stop second guessing it, right?
Right. It sounds to me like Jeff might need to talk to a professional just to be like, tell me I'm going to be okay, because we could take all these inputs and put them into a financial planning software and run some Monte Carlo simulations, and I'm guessing either one of these would show, you have a very high probability of succeeding in your financial plan.
Right, exactly.
Regardless of the allocation. So it's just, this is perfect being the enemy of good here, and just being like, I need someone to help me make this decision. Just point me in the right direction.
He's gotten everything else right, but I think he's missing the psychological aspect of this, is that decumulation is a different mindset than accumulation, right? He's always stuck to and been very disciplined in a DCA plan, but now he's taking assets out. And even if we know the math, and he's probably looked at Monte Carlo calculations, but even if we know the math, it's really hard for us to reconcile the fact that we can take 120,000 or 3% out of a portfolio every year, maybe increase that by inflation. And yet, if he's read Kitsis, if he's read the sequence of returns papers, he could, on average, according to the data, end up with maybe 6 times more than the amount that he started with, despite the bear markets, corrections, dips, and everything else that accompanies.
Right. He's obviously
investment.
Conservative enough by holding 3 years in cash. So that piece, to me, that's like, how do you fight sequence of return risk, Duncan? You said it's
you have a cash buffer.
It's a cash buffer and diversification. That's it. So he's got that figured out. So being conservative, he's got that totally like tied up in a neat bow. Seems fine. Yeah, just kind of needs someone to help him decide. He wants someone to say, yes, you can, you're going to be okay. And we don't know exactly how the future is going to play out, but I think based on the circumstances, you're doing pretty good.
It always helps to have that third party that's unemotional and that can pick apart your, sort of, it's I don't want to say distorted thoughts, but just slightly disrupted thinking about his portfolio and really focusing on one thing, stressing over it too much. And I think one more point, like one thing that he's maybe not focusing on, and Jeff, don't mean to throw a wrench into this. You've got plenty of time. You can kick this can down the road, but is longevity risk. He's 56. He might need his plan to last for 40 years. So he is focusing a lot on minimizing downside, making the right decisions. But at some point, you can't constrain upside too much.
Nick, you just caused Jeff to go into like an 8-year cash buffer.
I did. I shouldn't have said it. Take it back. Delete this. I take it back.
Well, I'm guessing too. I mean,
revisit this in 5 years, Jeff. But just get the 55-45 going.
Yeah.
Having this level of wealth, I'm guessing Jeff is really into doing this on his own, right? And like managing this.
That could be. I
feel like most people would be like, you know what?
He's obviously done his research and maybe doesn't want to take his hands off the steering wheel. But I think you can at least talk to someone. It doesn't have to be a relationship that you're in forever. It could be a one-time hourly kind of meeting if you want.
Yeah, you can talk to planners on an hourly basis that won't take over the investment management piece. That is available. That is an option, and I think that's definitely a good idea for him to get that affirmation. But so my takeaway is go forward, but also leave some room for flexibility. Sorry.
Yep.
You got to be flexible.
All right. Next question, Duncan.
Hey, up next we have a question from Lars. My small business employer uses a simple IRA. It caps out at $15,500 this year, so I effectively lose out on thousands of dollars of potential investing each year compared to my previous large employer that I had a 401k with. What is the purpose of this difference? Why does it feel like I'm being penalized for working for a small business? Oh, you're muted, Ben.
Oh.
Sorry. I don't know why there's not just one big bucket for everything, right? Retirement, HSAs, 529s, just give everyone it should be like a speed limit. Everyone follows the same limit. I don't know why, for whatever reason,
Someone's working
done
on that. Someone's working on that. A portable retirement plan that attaches, I think, to your social security number. But
so what other options do we have here? Because he's saying, listen, it's $15,500. I think the 401k is $22,500 now. Is that about right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So the max and the simple is $15,500. You get a 3% employer match plus a catch-up contribution of $3,500 if he's over 50. I'm assuming he's not because of the limit that he's.
What's the simple part? Why is it called simple?
It's an acronym, and really it kind of ties into the name. It's supposed to be simple and easy to set up, which is why they were at one point popular. But basically, so look, I mean, his alternatives are that, I mean, a small company, there's pros and cons to being at a small company, pros and cons to being at a large corporation that would offer a 401k. But maybe he can be vocal about it and bring up, hey, should we review this? Should we look at other options? Should we look at 401ks? But he can also save into an IRA at the same time. He may not be aware of that. He can max out a traditional or Roth IRA to $6,500 or $7,500. So it still doesn't really, shake a stick at a 401k and the benefits of having those 3 buckets usually of a pre-tax, Roth, and after-tax account. But to answer his question, why do small businesses have them is because they're small and they might be, cash constrained, time constrained. They might have, 10 or 20 employees. And so they don't want to go with a full-blown 401k plan.
More cost-effective, maybe, yeah.
But the thinking is a bit outdated. Look, simple IRAs, they suck, to be honest. 401ks are superior in every way, and now they've caught up to where the costs it's more affordable, and you can work with someone to take care of all the paperwork, and you can have a TPA involved, and there's more flexibility around them and whatnot.
But it's a lot easier with a company like Betterment or something for a small business that you could do it now. It would be a lot easier. The other thing is if he has any other form of income outside of his employer, he could do a SEP IRA, right, if he has some other income. The other thing, so Nick Majuli, member Duncan on this show, said why you shouldn't max out your 401k, and he said if you put your money into index funds and buy and hold and don't make a lot of moves that are going to cause taxes, that you can end up pretty close to the same place. So I guess a brokerage account is probably an option here too, as long as he's not trading his face off.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he could throw it in some ETFs, and it's not as tax advantaged, of course, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, simple IRAs are kind of like DVD players. No one really has much use for them unless you're Michael Batnick, I guess. But They're a bit outdated. 401ks are much easier to set up, easier to get going.
And the problem is a lot of these, I'm sure a lot of this stuff was set up like with good intentions at the time, and now that it's just we have all these different programs and plans, and it would be nice if we could simplify it, but unfortunately the tax code and the government doesn't really work like that.
So
Yeah, there is an update.
401ks are just too complex and expensive for small employers, basically? Is that what it comes down to?
They were. They're really not anymore. It's just kind of an outdated. It's an outdated piece. Maybe they initially sought out a 401k and they were advised to use a simple IRA, but things have changed. But there is a change.
Talk to the HR people about this for sure.
Yeah, I would bring it up. I think it's worthwhile, and I don't think he's really overstepping just to ask a question, just to look at other options. But there is a new update thanks to Dan LaRosa. He runs all of our corporate retirement plans, so we do small business 401ks and such here. The Secure Act 2.0 now allows for a Roth option within his simple IRA plan. So I can't fix the contribution limit, but at least now you're aware of those other two options of the Roth and the additional Roth IRA contribution that you can make.
So Dave in the chat says SIMPLE stands for Savings Incentive Matching Plan for Employees.
Ah, right.
I feel like that's kind of a stretch. They just wanted it to be simple, and they just came up with words that matched, but not bad.
Nothing like using simple as an acronym for something that doesn't sound simple.
Yes. All right. Next week, Duncan is off. He will be traveling throughout Germany, drinking liter beers and eating Wiener Schnitzel.
You know it.
Hopefully
well,
in a
not
lederhosen.
Schnitzel, but yeah.
Okay, that's just true. I got sick on it when I was there. Actually, it didn't sit right with me. Yeah, you won't be eating. You'll be eating.
I'll be eating a lot of pretzels. I love a good pretzel.
Okay. Thank you to Nick for joining us and helping out with some financial advice questions. Bill Sweet next week will be filling in for Duncan as my co-host. Remember, email us askthecompoundshow@gmail.com. We always appreciate everyone in the live chat. Leave us a comment or a question on YouTube, and we will see you next time.
See you, everyone.
See ya. Thanks, guys.
Oh, Duncan, someone says here that you should